After the failure of the November 1830 uprising, thousands of Poles left the country to live a life in exile. They represented the cultural elite, the artistic elite, the literary elite. What was the effect on Poland, on ideas, on culture, of having the major cultural and political influences be forged outside the lands of Poland? In this episode of Poland Daily History, we look at these issues in greater detail and assess the effect of this great emigration. Welcome to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. Today I'm in the studio with Dominik Szczęsny-Kostonecki, a historian and a PhD scholar, and we're going to discuss the Great Emigration. Dominik, thank you for joining us. In terms of sort of daily life within the Hotel Lambert and the people involved, what did that look like?
I mean, the so-called everyday life was rather harsh. These people, many of them didn't know the language. Of course, I'm not talking about Prince Adam, who spoke French, equally well as Polish or as Russian and other languages. But many people didn't know the language. So first they had to cross the linguistic barrier. Then, of course, they were given some sort of dole by the French government, but it wasn't much.
No.
And we also have to remember that the time span of that subsidy was limited. So they had to find a job. Many of them were suffering from depression because they were not quite away from their country, from their families. So many of them got irritated. Many of them got into duels. I mean, duels were an eminent element of the everyday life of the Polish society there mostly in Paris. But of course there were also because what I say is rather bleak. Of course, there was also gloom. People, gathering in the Polish church, the so-called Polish church. I mean, we call it the Polish church because since the 40s, one of the Parisian churches, that is Notre Dame de l'Assomption, so Our Lady of the Assumption, in the very heart of next to La Madeleine.
Okay, yeah.
Church. Which is there, was administrated by Polish clergymen, and that's why it's called the Polish Church, and it's still in Polish hands today. So it's one of the remnants, let's say, of the Great Emigration from that time. So people going to church, people celebrating anniversaries of the November Revolution, and so on and so on. But it was tough. Generally, it was tough.
And why was Paris chosen as a sort of? How did Paris become the centre? I mean, it's quite a long way from Warsaw to Paris. And
no, first of all, the French government was most willing to accept these people and to give them something at least. I mean, Great Britain was on the second place. I mean, but it's also funny because when it, sometimes those political movements, those political parties were regarded, some of them were regarded as, let's say, too radical or too dangerous. And then when that would happen, these people would move to Great Britain, to, liberal Great Britain, that would accept any kind of, political views. That's what happened to the radical left.
Because there was at one point, there was the Polish National Committee, which was relatively short-lived, I think, in 1831, 1832, before the French government decided it was probably a bit too radical even for the French. I think I remember reading.
Which was actually a mistake because it was rather moderate. I mean, but there was more fear than needed, in fact. The Polish National Committee that you've mentioned is the first attempt to unite the emigration as a whole. It was led by, we've mentioned Adam Jerzy Czartoryski, so one of the leaders of the popular opinion on the right. And on the left, we've got Joachim Lelevel. And Joachim Lelevel, who was, that's what I call an eminent historian, sometimes called the father of the Polish historiography, also a politician, also a member of the national government in the November Rising, was the leader of the left. And that was his initiative to create the Polish National Committee to unite the emigration. But it soon turned out that what is for everybody is for nobody. That is to say, when you want to have an organization that unites everybody, I mean, it's impossible, because some are more to the left, some are more to the right. I mean, we often think of ourselves, I mean, we Poles, we often think of ourselves that when you've got two Poles, you've got three opinions.
Indeed, yes.
So
sometimes more than three, I think, in my experience.
So there you go. So that's why it was short-lived, and it existed only, as you mentioned,
about a year or so. Yes.
And that's why. First, it was the left the left that left the Polish National Committee. The secessionists from the Polish National Committee created Towarzystwo Demokratyczne Polskie that we've mentioned, TDP. So the first Polish political party in the modern sense, and then you've got others. I mean, there was a great number. There was a few 40, 50 maybe even parties, committees throughout that period. I mean, that period from roughly, of course, November and January Uprising, so roughly 30 years.